Okay, now to be honest, it's been quite a while since I've touched this one, so it's had lots of time to dry, which is great. Now what we're going to do is move on with the weathering. So to start off, we're going to give it a wash, straightforward clay wash right over the top. We're going to use two colours down here. So actually what we've got is the black. Basically, this is our shadows and our dark recesses, things like that, okay? And we're going to use our grime. Now, you could come in with a straightforward dark dirt, which is somewhere between what this is, but we want this to have sort of, you know, shadows, quite dark shadows, and then the grime we want to be quite separate for the lower areas, and to give a more vehicle look. So if you wanted to, you could just go straight in with the dark dirt, which is something between these two colours, but that'll be an overall colour to it everywhere, where I want this to be more specific in certain areas and different areas in others. Now, we've spoken about it before. You can obviously put this on with a brush, so a big brush for doing something like this would be absolutely perfect. Put it down everywhere. The trouble is with armour, because you've got all these lumps, bumps, nooks and crannies, it's very difficult to sort of get it very smooth with a brush, because by its nature, the basically the stuff in here that helps breaks the surface tension and makes it flow better, you get bubbles from it. And the trouble with the bubbles, when they dry, it gives you a certain look. To get around that problem, we're going to put it in with an airbrush. Now in here, this is my standard airbrush we use for everything. It's got a 0.2 or a 0.2 needle set in this one, so it's very small. We should have no problems with the wash going through onto this one. The only drawback to it is when you're putting it through with an airbrush, it can be quite messy and you use a lot more than you would technically if you're using a brush. On the plus side though, everything that happens in nature, i.e. drag, streak marks, things like that, will happen naturally with this, okay? Because what's going to happen is everything's going to want to run south. So we will automatically get nice drain marks, skid marks, and all the rest of it as it actually happens and sort of flows down. So all that water streaking that you normally have to do by hand, things like that, we can do automatically with this. So what we're going to do first of all is grab a little bit of protection just around here. So we're just going to sit this guy down onto a couple of bits of towel. This is just to catch it, because let's face it, it's going to be messy. It's going to go absolutely everywhere. Okay, so we just stick this down on here like that. All right, then what we're going to do is grab an airbrush, and then we're going to grab some normal water. So to be honest, what we've got down here is normal tap water. And we're just going to put a little bit in here. The idea is you line the airbrush and you can make sure it's working and all those things. Okay, now there is no right, wrong, anything to this whatsoever. It's just a case of chucking this down and making it sort of flow naturally all over this one, okay? Now, a couple of little tips for you. If you wanted a more clean look, you might want to pre-wet it first. By pre-wetting it, it basically is going to thin anything that gets put onto this. It's clay. It's clay, think mud, okay? That's why it works so well on armour, because it's basically giving you that road film, mud look to it and everything else like that. If you want it to be quite heavy looking, then obviously you want to use this straight from the bottle, neat into your airbrush. If you want it to be a little bit more, something in between, what you could obviously do is put a little bit of water in here first and thin it. Thin it with normal tap water. Distilled water works even better and you're absolutely fine. Just remember, the golden rule with this stuff is any mixes you make, any changes you make to the bottle, decant it first. So what we're going to do is, just to show, we are going to decant it into a couple of little plastic cups we've got here. Okay, now these have had a very good shake up. So this is our black, as you can see, it's pretty nice. It should be nice and smooth. Okay, right the way over. And then this guy over here is going to be our grime. Again, make sure these have a good mix, because they do have a tendency to separate. They are clay after all, so what could happen is they're going to settle and be thicker at the bottom. So give them a good old shake to wake them up. But again, right out of the bat, you should be a nice smooth consistency. Basically, it looks like paint, all right? Now, think ahead of exactly how you're going to do this, all right? So what I'm going to try and do here, the first coat is going to be the shadowing. It's going to be the black one right on this one. We're going to let that naturally dry in all the areas. We can then come back at this, have a look at it, see exactly what we've got. Now, if we're finding perhaps it's too dark, it's darkened everything too much, everything else like that, then we can take a little bit off, which we'll speak about in a moment, all right? Or you can then re-add. So if you're thinking, not quite dark enough, I want it to look a bit darker, then you can go in a bit more. And don't forget, at any point you can go in with a brush and just add and take away exactly how you feel. So, Right in here, we're going to start off with the blacks. This is neat straight into the colour cup. We're not going to put gallons in, and if you've got a way of locking off your trigger, it might help, because sometimes you can over flood it and you get far too much straight off the bat, whereas perhaps you want to put on light coats and build up. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to lock my trigger so I don't get a full pull. So we're trying to just tighten and screw the thing even. So that will do. Okay, and we're just going to go right the way over the entire top. Okay, and don't splash it everywhere if you can help it. You can hold a colour cut lid, you'll be even better. Don't forget, the great thing with this stuff is it's all water based, no problem with cleaning up, just use normal water. Okay, so this is going on just to make a dark. So you could use this obviously if you want to do it for exhaust stains and everything else. So we're just putting in the first coat. Now we haven't overcoated this or done anything to this one at all, purely because there's no decals and there's no risk to anything whatsoever. In the wheels, and to be honest, down here in the wheels, as you're going to see, the lower half is all going to get a lot more. Okay, now as soon as we've got one little layer on, we're going to come in with a second one, which is far more heavy. And if you get anything where it sort of beads up, just give it a good squirt, just like this. Okay, so you've got it, and it's looking black and horrible. All right, around the top here. And what we're doing now is picking out areas where naturally you're going to get build up. So the first bit is to literally get a coat of this going on here. The second coat as you come through is designed to actually work. So the first one just to give it something to grip to. And if you get a fingerprint or something, just give it an extra squirt, okay? What happens is all the stuff that's inside the wash will eat through a fingerprint, all right? So you won't have to worry about it. Got one at the top here. Go over it, squirt it right over. Okay, all those areas like that. And in the back, move the turret round. Okay. Around the back here. Okay, and this won't take long to dry at all. So what we're going to do, just as we're waiting, just going to flip this over onto its roof. Okay, minding all the aerials and everything. Now what we're going to do is just going to put just down on the insides. Over the wheels, tracks, all the stuff you can think of or see and get to. Because basically this is going to get in all those areas you can't get to. Okay, so just going to pick this up. Don't worry about fingerprints on it too much. And don't worry about what pressures you're spraying this out or anything else. Okay, so that's that all on there just like that. Okay, that's fine. Alright, and as you can see on the top we are drying already, okay, and that's the thing to this one, it doesn't take long to dry it at all. Okay, and as you can see we've got some white marks and various things in there and all these different areas. Okay, so what you can do is you can hit this with a hairdryer to speed it up, but what we're going to do now is show you two different ways of actually removing this stuff. Now if you've got things like photo etch, all those little bits that are going to break off if you come at it with a cloth, use a normal paintbrush. If you've got a wide one, it just speeds things up. If you haven't, don't worry about it. Normal water. Don't worry about getting over your model because it's all going to add to it. Wipe off a little bit. Okay, so just wipe off any excess you might have. All right, and then what you can do is you can start to run over. Okay, and you can create lots of great effects with this. Okay, so if you wanted to, you could create cleaner spots. So that's what I'm doing at the top here, and it'll look like it's been wiped over, and you're going to do no damage to the thing. And you take your brush, give it a rinse out, clean it out. Okay, and you can take off and leave exactly what you want. So it's like dry brushing in reverse, because in a moment I'll show you it on a dry, but this is just to get it in just like this and get it out of all the nooks and crannies perhaps you don't want it. Okay, so we're just taking it back a little bit, and as you can see it will paint anything black. So if you wanted to do like snow camo, you just do the same with the light wash. Okay, and you can create basically any type of dark weathering or dirt or anything else you want with this. We're just going over everything. But like here where we've got these hooks and hatches and everything else on this, and all you're going to do is basically rehydrate all the wash, the clay, and it'll start to move and open up. And okay, so we're just going to go around here, just going to go around the back. Alright, now this side, what we're going to do is we're taking some of the water and we're going to place it right over everything, so it naturally will start to move and eat. Okay, so take it off the brush, just in the pot, as you can see here, and we're going to run this over. So this is what's going to give it the look like it's had a wash. Okay, so you can get it into these areas and it'll just make all this wash flow so much better. Okay, so we're just going to come over here with it and give it a real natural look to everything. Okay, and just keep it all moving all nicely. Okay, so hopefully you can see it's looking all dirty and dark and yucky, but also it'll start to flow now and start to run into recesses, and it'll get all its own look and everything else like that. So if we show you on this side, okay, going to take the water, okay, we're just going to over brush it because this is dry on here now. Okay, and then what we're going to do is going to work it south. So we're going to go with the direction of the water flow. So picking up the top, I'm going to go down, taking some off, so get some on the brush, wipe away because you've got too much down there really than what we need. Okay, then we're just going to wipe and drag. Okay, then you would let that naturally hang south. So I'm just going to take water now. We're just going to put water right the way over everything, and then you leave it down here. Now the idea being it's on its side, everything is going to run, hopefully the side camera might get it, everything's going to start to run south and everything's going to drain down and all those different areas just like that. Okay, the other way you can do it, of course, if you take a brush and you use it like dry brushing in reverse, so we've got most of the water off here, we can actually start to streak it manually downwards. So this is taking it off the brush, okay, and we're just running it down now manually over the areas. We do first half, okay, literally just like that. So we're taking some water, clean out the brush, okay, then back over, and this will give you those things. Now don't forget, this is in the black, we've still got other colours to go on, and you can go on with more colours exactly how you want. So we're just going to add a little bit more water just to get this to flow and blend and all these things down here. So okay, so you take it off, okay, and then we're just gonna now streaking downwards, so you're picking it up and you drag it literally just like this. Okay, so you're streaking over, so you absorb and streak. Okay, and if you notice how it's catching around all the nuts and bolts, okay, and that's the point to this, it's hanging there and it giving you this sort of look. There's a different technique you can do and do it upside down, so all the shadowing goes the other way and various things, okay? But this gives you this type of effect, and it will stain and bleach and everything else. Now in our case, we've got other colours going to be coming in here, such as the muddy colour in a moment, to take care of this a lot more. But hopefully you can see exactly what you can get with just using water and a little bit of wash, all right? So imagine all the different techniques you could do with it and everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this guy around here, all right? Just going to grab water, all right, and we're just going to going over this, the different areas. So the first pass here, all you're trying to do is break it up. Okay, first pass is to get it wet and to get it moving. Okay, clean off your brush, re-wet it, because all you're doing is cleaning the brush, water everywhere. Okay, and then next ones you come down, you're starting to streak and maneuver it. Okay, so you're taking away and just sort of blending, all right? So again, coming up. And the water will blend it. That's all this is water. Don't forget, we're not playing anything else, no magical games with it and all the rest of it. It is literally just water and blending the wash. So don't be fooled into all these expensive different things you can go out and buy and get, and to do roughly what we're doing right here, okay? And to say, if it looks too much, just brush it away. So here, perhaps we'll take away a little bit on the top. Okay, if we show you, and that is it. Simple as that, okay? Really straightforward, really very easy to do, all right? So if we pop down on this side now, this is the side that's naturally wetting, and we're just gonna, this one's a little bit more, you know, organic, and I want to make it a little bit cleaner perhaps. So we're going right the way over here. Now one thing to remember, and it's quite important, you might see over here, we've got the paintwork bubbling up. This is because we haven't protected it. It's nothing to do with chemicals and things like that, because trust me, there isn't any. But what happens is, it's acrylic and it'll bubble. Don't panic, leave it, it will dry back just fine, okay? So there we go, we're just gonna go over this guy now. And we're taking, exactly the same as we did the other one, taking it away and dragging it south. And let it naturally weather. Okay. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to let that dry now for around about an hour just to reharden. So up on the top we can do exactly the same thing, okay? So just get in there with areas perhaps you want to remove a little bit. Any areas perhaps you may have got a little bit of damage like we've done there, you can just be very careful with. Alright, and you can just use your brush to take around. Now I know what you might be thinking, well normally you go around with a cloth and spitty tissue and all things like that. Very true, but trying to get that in amongst this is very, very difficult. If we just take a part, you can wipe it, but if you do it, you're going to end up with a real clean spot and then horrible around the nooks and crannies. But what you can do is obviously like a dabbing technique, just to pick up a little bit of dirt and grime. If you've got big areas like here, it's not so bad, but trying to get this in amongst all these little areas can be a real headache. And obviously we're trying to make this look as genuine as possible, and trying to do it with tissue just doesn't work. So what I tend to do is, you can just literally come along, brush, and wipe out, okay? But as I said, don't worry too much about this, because in a moment you're going to do it again with another colour. Okay, this is literally just a okay, and it is a simple case, we're showing this side, of giving you that nice general grimy look. We've lost that edginess if you like, okay? But what I would suggest is this bit is literally just a case of getting rid of you know, the bit where it's too much in there. But if you look, we've got some great textures going down in here, some various parts all in, but you're just keeping it moving around. Okay, just trying to get it in. Like, we need to get a bit off the top here around this turret set, because quite frankly it's far too dirty. Okay, right on there. All right, so what I'm going to do, carry on going around this guy, get as much as it as we can off where we need to, all right, and then we can come back with a second coat. This one's going to be a little bit more specific, purely because obviously we've got to be a bit more careful where it's going to go, what it's going to be doing, and everything else. Obviously you're not going to get mud right over the top of this thing, but you're probably going to get lots down the side and all things like that. Okay, so been drying now for the last, I suppose, around about half an hour or so. Hopefully you can see down on here, this has all gone back to normal now, so it's not like sticking up anymore and gone ripply and everything else, and that's where the paint is then, you know, basically dehydrating, drying out, and it sticks all back to the wall. Just think bubbly wallpaper, stuff like that. But there we go, that's how we are looking. That's the side, and now you can see you sort of get that shadowing and the darkness, and hopefully the big thing you can notice as well, originally when we did this it was very light. We knew we were going to come in with black, so it's darkened down. Now if you was to be coming in with slightly lighter shades of things, so let's say you've gone slightly different route and you've gone down the actual dark dirt route, it's not going to go quite as dark, okay? And then don't forget, you could lighten anything with the whitewash, okay, or the light wash, or if you wanted to do snow camo and things like that, that's how you would basically do it. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but this time we are going to use the actual grime. So we're just going to blow out the last of the other stuff, and to be honest, we're just going to give this a bit of a mix because it will have separated in the colour cup, in the little cup down here. So we just pull that up and just take a bit in there because we've got the black mixed in, so that will just get rid of that. And then we're just going to tip this in here. Now this is going to give us our grime look, the dirty look, the mud look, and everything else like that. So we're going to think about this in the way we're going to put it down. All right, so with lower areas, obviously you're going to get a line of it and then work our way up, and then we're going to stop and we're going to let that dry back very naturally, just as it is, and hopefully it will all fall south. So we're not going to be coming in on the top, we're just going to do front, lower areas around the back. Obviously may get a bit flicking up, things like that, but generally just like this, it's not going to be right the way over the tank. All right, so you can see already this is starting to fade south and run south and all the rest of it. So we are literally just as you would, a little bit up the front, but nothing tons of it. And again, heavy as hell down the bottom, and then work our way up, and then round the back we imagine it's going to get lots of it flicked up and chucked up over the back. The track as well is obviously going to get it, so making sure you come in both sides of the track, everything else like that. All right, and then we're just going to let that sink naturally south. Now I've got a little bit left in that cup, all right, but that is all we're going to do there. We're just going to naturally let it pull down and go through the motions of it. Now if you wanted to, exactly the same thing, you could take a little bit from here and you can put perhaps a little bit around the hatches. This brush is way too big for this, but you can just, you know, think about, okay, well look, it's probably going to get footfall and everything else around these areas, so we're just going to put in some dirtiness down into here, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll come along with water afterwards. Okay, so we can just put them in. All right, or of course you could just literally cut the air pressure right back. As you can probably hear, we've got hardly anything, and you could then just put this in and be a bit more specific on where you want this. This doesn't need high air pressure to fly this round everywhere. Okay, and in fact low air pressure puts bigger bits on there and all the rest of it. All right, so that goes on there just like that, and then down over here it's a little bit more. But we could be a lot more specific perhaps on where we want this and get it to run and flow and all those things. And this is generally our mud colour that it runs on with. Now the other thing you've got to do as well is, if I can find them, are these guys. There's one, here's the other. Now these obviously would be absolutely plastered in mud. These are actually the scoops, the plough system which pulls the mines out of the way and everything else. So what we're going to do is going to give this an overcoat of one But you're imagining this would be really filthy. So we're just going to do that, and then we're going to let it sit and naturally, or hopefully as it would, go down. Need a little bit more. Okay. And remember, with all of this is all to taste. Okay, so if at any point you think, yeah, well, that's great, but it's far too much. Yeah, it's too much for me. Want to knock it back a little bit, then by all means knock it back. So you've got a couple of options for knocking this back. I'll just tip that away. Okay. You can let this stuff dry, which I would highly recommend. Okay, then you can actually power wash this stuff off, all right, which is a lovely little technique which we'll show you a little bit later, all right, when this is totally dry. But this is now plain water, and that's how we clean this out, so don't panic about your airbrush. Okay, so we've just got water, and you can say complete colour cut dump. And then, to be honest, I've got some acrylic thinners, and this will just get rid of all the last bits of the nasties. So we just turn the air pressure right up, blow it out, and obviously if you've got your airbrush cleaner with lubricants and all those things in there, then I'd recommend doing that. The reason why I put thinners through it, because it's alcohol based, the alcohol will evaporate, so it gets rid of all the water. That's why I do it. Okay, so if you ever wonder why, you know, airbrush cleaners and things like that, just think alcohol, like electronics. You know, you may or may not know, but if you get something wet that's electronics, if you submerge it in alcohol, the alcohol will repel all the water, and it's the water that does the damage, because that can corrode and rust. Where you take it out and the alcohol will evaporate and gives you a nice clean thing. Tip there for you: if you ever get anything electronically like that, bath it in IPA, then let it go. All right, so same thing with your airbrush, that's why we clean that out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this just sit naturally now and look like a complete mess. Okay, then it's the fun stuff, because once this is dry, you can then do exactly what we did really with the black stuff. So you can come along literally with the brush, water, spitty tissue, okay, and all the rest of it, and rub it off to taste, all right, exactly how you want it. Or we're going to do this one slightly different. We're going to pressure wash it off, all right. So what actually we're going to do, a little bit of warm water, plain tap water through the airbrush, okay, and then we're actually going to power rinse this thing down and then let it naturally sit, so it will streak and grime and all those effects that take you hours to do with different products. We can do this one in literally 5 minutes, all right. So let's let this one dry naturally. It's probably going to take around about an hour. Come back, pressure wash it back down, and we'll be good to go. Okay, so we've been drying now, and we are all, you can see, totally dry. And you can see it dries back quite nicely. You get all those areas. So what we're going to do is show you a couple of little techniques with this. So over here, to be honest, I have got some very hot water. Okay, so we're just going to put in, to be honest, boiled the kettle for this. We just put a little bit just to stand. Okay, I've got some normal water as well from earlier. So a little bit of cold water here. Okay. Now, the thing is, because we're playing with clay by its nature, as you might imagine, when it warms up, it gets more malleable, it's easier to move and everything else like that. In the same way, it washes off really easily. So think about it like your plates at home. Okay, so you're doing your washing up. If you do it with cold water under the tap, you know it takes quite a bit to get that ketchup off your plate, all right? Hot water streaks it off straight away. Exactly the same way when you're dealing with this type of wash, because the clay will just rinse off very, very easy. So if you're in a situation where you want to leave some pretty hefty, you know, dirt behind and grime and all things like that, then the chances are you want to use cold water. Now, by using cold water, what's going to happen is it's going to stick more, it's going to chip, it's going to give you more texture and everything else like that. So in the same way as we're down here, you see the wheels are still very, very wet on this, but hopefully the top areas will give us some nice streaking. So this is exactly what we did before. You can just rehydrate and streak down, okay, and you can just take away little bits, okay. So if we just do a panel like this, you can see we can put down and just make it just as we did before, but this time obviously we would be coming in with you know, the more sort of mud look to it. Instead of it looking very dark, it's now going to give you that sort of more muddy look, all right. So all we do, we're coming in, and if you like, we're just rehydrating to the clay. So these pool areas we've got where it's just built up a bit, we're just going to rub them out, okay, and then we're just going to go everywhere, just going to bring it down and streak and give it rain marks and all this stuff you hear about that a lot of people talk about. So okay, so we're just using the side of the brush out in the vertical to give us streaking dirt and grime. Now because we're using this muddy colour as well, it should have a lot better use to it. Okay, so that gives you sort of very streaky. So what I'm going to do now, rinse the brush, okay, get most of it off, and then again like we did before, just to refine it a little, make it a little less scratchy looking, things like that. We're just going to come in, okay, just take away those areas and give us a more nice and subtle look. Now a lot of people might say, like, why do this technique and all the rest of it. The thing is, with all these techniques, they are completely safe. And when I say safe, anything goes wrong with this, not a problem. We'll just rinse it away and we'll start again. Okay, so you don't have to worry about huge mistakes and things, and you can play with it. So like you might have seen just then, we had a little bit going on here. We got these little areas at the top, you might see them up here. All right, all we're going to do is hydrate them, so we give them a little bit of a rub, they begin to disappear, and then we just brush around with them and we can blend them all in. All right, so that gives us different layers of weathering. Okay, and that's what it's all about. This, it's the ability to go in to change things easily, simply, and with no risk. So there we go, that's done. So down here you've got effects as, you know, obviously shadowing through washes and things like that. So we've got the dark stuff going on along these rivet heads and everything else like that. All right, so what we'll do is we're just going to try and drop the top camera down just a little bit, which it's not liking today. So let me just drop this top camera down. Okay, so now you can see exactly what we've got going on. All right, so we've taken it from being extremely nice and clean and everything else like that, and given it some hell of a job on the weathering. All right, so that's it. So, you know, depending on how far you wanted to go with this, you could say, yeah, that's fine, I'm really happy with that, no problems at all, time to move on. You know, with the next things, you could seal it down and away you go. All right, now over here on this side, okay, we're going to do something slightly different. So we'll try first with cold water. So down here, this is just our normal cold water into the colour cup. Okay, now think pressure washing your car. Okay, so what we're going to do, we'll just stick it slightly on its edge. We want it to run south, so we're doing the same way. All right, and then we're just going to come along and hit it. Now immediately as we do this, you can see in one pass we've cleaned off some of the high side and some of those areas. All right, but because it's cold water and it's coming through at quite a rate of knots, okay, so this time, because it's starting to go soft now because it's wet, it will come off a lot easier. So this time what we're going to do, we are going to come in and be a bit more precise. Down here, as you can see, we're just flicking it up and down. Okay, and we can flick it over the surface to expose stuff and various things just like that. Because don't forget, technically what we're doing is, if we go in here, we can clean it like a pressure washer and take it completely back to how we want it. Okay, now the trouble with this is, because you're using it like this, it is very, very focused and directional and everything else, and that's the trouble with cold water. It's great for doing an overall look, so perhaps down here would be a good example for the underside. Okay, right the way over to wet. Okay, then once it's wet you can start to scrape off and rinse back to give you different sort of weathered looks and effects. Okay, and as you can see, it's all rinsing it back now to give you different weathered effects and everything else. Okay, and this is the thing with cold water, it's not quite as fast as you would be doing it with hot water. So if we just tip that away, dump that in here, we've got warm water now. Okay, drop a warm water in here. Okay, let's pick up the top. So what we're going to do now is just going to pop around some of these higher areas. You can see around here, this is warm water. So you can see it cutting through a lot quicker. Okay, it'll give you more of a grind out look. Okay, and we're just going to rinse all this off, and we're going to tip it to let the water, by its nature, run south and all those things. And there we go, you get things like that. But if we use hot water, so this is, to be honest, the reason it's in the jug, to keep it a lot hotter, and we just spin this around here, okay, we should see a slightly different effect, okay? If I just lock that off. Okay, you can see it's cutting through very, very quickly. Okay, so you have to be a little bit more, and to be honest, I got the trigger locked because if I went in full tilt, it would literally clean it back. So this, okay, and we're just drying now and everything else. And we can go in there and dry it all back exactly how you want it. So it gives you a different area. And then don't forget, the great thing about all of this is we will just load up again, shall we, so with some of this. So we're going in with the grime, we've got the grime in here, lock the trigger down, and we can re-put this on. And this is the other thing, because it's going over a wet coat, it will filter itself. Okay? And that is one thing which is great for things like this. Okay, so this down here now it's got some on, you can reapply and go in with a second coat, and you'll get this original one showing through a little bit, okay, and then you get the darker one on the top. So it is all different things of going through layers, levels, and everything else like that, okay? And that is the thing with it, you can put in, you can take away, and everything else like that, okay? From my point of view, I'm looking for something we've done like on this side. I quite like this side. It's got this sort of nice warm dirty look and everything else like that, okay? These other ones, not really to my cup of tea, okay? So what I'll probably do with a lot of these is we'll wet the brush, okay? And whilst it's still just a little bit wet and everything else, we're just going to go in and blend like we did in the early days. Just sort of knock this around a bit, blend it around, just take some of this heavy stuff off and push it in to all the nooks and the crannies, because quite frankly it's a little bit too much of what we want. It's supposed to be a modern tank, okay? So we're just going to blend these areas now because they're too sharp in contrast. And then what we're going to do, we're going to filter this in a moment. And when I say filter it, we are literally just going to put a rinse of water over it to thin it. Okay, so the thicker stuff that is dried will stay. The bubbles and all the other stuff will literally just run off. Okay, so like this guy on the side now, we can just take a bit of this off. Okay, and we're just going to run this all down in here. Okay. A bit around these fronts. Okay, because there's nothing worse when it's heavy and overdone. Okay, so we do it literally just like that, and then we dump that. So we've got the warm water, which will work brilliantly. So we're just going to put the warm water into this, lock the trigger down, a little bit more. And then it's just water over the top, and it will thin everything's going on. The bubbles that you see on here will also disappear. Water hitting off the front. Good. And what will happen is naturally everything will head south, rinse down. Okay. So I think rinsing your car. So to be honest, we're just coming in now with the water technique around the delicate parts, so around the hatching, okay, and everything else like that. So all of this stuff down here in the back of the hatches, if you watch, we can rinse that off around these guns, the top parts, just knocking it back all the time. Because it's hot water though, it should make it very smooth and easy. Okay, and if you want to, you know, just get in there to thin out certain areas, things like that. But again, it's all that thing of distance. If you're a long way away, then obviously it's going to drain back. Okay. So we're just going to hold this up here so everything runs off in all the right directions. But it is that thing, you can make some great different weathering techniques. Okay, so now we just got air literally in here, so I'm just going to blow all the excess water away. Okay, so we're using this for sort of drying back and everything all at the same time now, because the splash is being caused by the dirty water coming out of everywhere. You can see we've got lots of them. Those tracks and trails from everything will just dirty everything down. Okay, and give us exactly what we're after. Okay. Okay, and then stop. Literally, stop. When you think you've overdone it, stop. And to be honest, I'm getting a little bit too clean there, so that's why I've pulled away from it and everything else like that. Next thing, of course, you can come in now if you wanted to with a hairdryer on a cool setting, dry this back. Just be advised though, if you haven't sealed it, or even if you have sealed it, you may get bubbling. And to be honest, I don't think we've got too, oh, there we go. We've got a little bit happening. You might see it just down on the front here. So down in here, got this bubbling in the texture of the paint. Again, that's what we're talking about when it gets far too wet and it starts to all come apart and everything else like that. But we've shown you lots of different techniques, but basically doing the same thing. And I know it sounds a little bit odd like that, but in the same heart, my way of doing it, to be honest, is that way. Okay, we do that sort of striping stuff and we pull down, that way we get the nice grittiness and all things like that. So with that one, think old armour, things like that, really, really nice. This is tend to be more modern, so you might want to keep it a little bit cleaner. But obviously this side, we don't have this markings down on here, but we need to put those in. So what we're going to do, we take our brush. This is all still a little bit wet, so we're just going to coming in whilst it's still got a little bit of moisture. Okay, and we're just trying to rehydrate things, get things moving, so we can get that nice streakiness back into this and gives it that sort of look of things going down. The only thing is, because the heavy clay was around the nuts and bolts and things like that, the chances are those areas now are going to be cleaner. So you need just a little bit of something. So what I'm going to do is just going to take a little bit of black here, and we're just going to put some black just into these bolts, because we've got these bolts down here, because I want them to cling on again. Okay, so whilst it's just sitting there, literally just like that, and then again I'm just going to streak it. Okay, because I know it'll cling on around those bolts, and we're just going to do exactly the same thing. This is basically just to get me the same as I've got on the other side, because I don't want it to be different, you know. Okay, so we're just drying back off now. We'll start with these top ones. I'm just going to pull these just around, just to make them, okay, just to sit. As I say, unload your brush between brush pulls. You'll get a very nice effect, but hopefully now you can see we've got nice stuff going on around everything. So I'm just going to take some of this fluid off the bottoms of the wheels. Okay, so when that dries back, hopefully it will give us our same effect as we've got on the others. And there we go. So that's it. I know it sounds like a selling point of doing the wash. Technically I am, I suppose. But what we've covered here, you could go out and buy 10 products to do exactly the same thing. I'm just trying to show you how versatile the wash is and easy. Because at any point, if I'm not happy with any of this now, I would literally either load up the airbrush with warm water and rinse it, or I'd take it over to the kitchen tap with a brush, rinse it all off, let it dry, and I could start again. And there's no risk whatsoever to the paint, the model, the decals, your photo etch, or anything else with it, okay? And that is the beauty with this stuff and the reason why I love it so much, okay? But there we go, that's it. So you've got a couple of things there: streaking, rain marks, obviously your shadowing, whelks, and everything else like that going right the way around it. And then we've got heavy dirt, which is hopefully going to dry onto these and give us exactly what we want when they're fitted to the front. We've got heavy shadowing on here. Again, that needs to be taken back. We'll take it back. You can probably see on these now, just by giving them a wash right over it, giving them nice dark shadows and everything else just down on there. So there we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry completely, then come back and look at it in a good couple of hours, or probably tomorrow, and see exactly what we got. If we're happy with it, then what we can actually do is put it all together, go round, and then we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing right over it, just to make things pop, some details, weather up some of that track system just around there. And then obviously the world's your oyster. You could carry on now. You come in with pigments, you could come in with mud effects, you could come in with any type of effects you want right the way over the top of this. Okay, so we've pushed on a little bit. We've gone around, done a little bit more titivation, things like that. The main thing I did was literally just go around, give it a little bit more black just down on the sides. And I took a little bit more off of the front end, where you can see this. Basically down here we've got more mud at the back. I'm just thinking the way it's going to be throwing this crap up and all around at back here. So we took a little bit more off the front, left the streaking in, but when I did that I took off a little bit of the black, and I want to put the black back in. So we've popped the black back in there, but we've left things like down here, this grill area, things like that, particularly muddy around the back, and you can see we've done the same on the other side. All right, but this side's not quite as grimed in because it hasn't got the exhaust and all of that, so I'm thinking that would like add to it. Okay, you might also notice we've been round and we've painted the barrels black, because I got that slightly wrong, so we've touched that in. It looks like all the barrels are black, and the smoke and the discharges on the top here, we've actually painted those black as well. Okay, so generally now that's the grime level, just the wash, that's all it was, and it gives all these different effects we were speaking about before, about streaking and all those grimy surfaces just like that.